Welcome to Higher Energy, a podcast created by the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and along with my co-host, Bob Schwartz, we are bringing you interviews 2 times a month at least with some of the leading people in the fields of energy psychology, mindfulness, mind-body work. We're talking to people who are amazing beings. What, Bob?
Consciousness.
Consciousness, absolutely. Neuropsychology. We're talking to all kinds of interesting people, and we're delighted to have you with us here today because one of those interesting people is Dr. Fred Luskin, and he will be joining us today. So let me tell you a little bit about him before we get going. Dr. Luskin founded and currently serves as director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Projects. He's also senior consultant in health, promotion, wellness at the Stanford University Health Center and department chair in clinical psychology at Sophia University. He teaches classes on positive psychology, the art and science of meditation, forgiveness, wellness, flourishing, and the psychology of storytelling. He also conducts numerous workshops and staff development trainings in many places. He is the author of 3 best-selling books, Forgive for Good, Forgive for Love, and Stress Free for Good. He does many other interesting things. He's been interviewed on all the major shows. And he also teaches stress management, emotional intelligence, and happiness skills to corporate clients using the research-proven triad, the triad of a healthy, happy life. One thing is enhancing interpersonal relationships. The second, creating a positive purpose in life. And third, guided practice in appreciation and other positive emotions. So please, Dr. Fred Luskin, join us because we've got lots of questions to ask you about all these things.
Well, hi. Thank you.
He's in the sweet spot of what we're talking about here. If everybody did what he said, they'd all have higher energy.
Excellent point. Excellent point. So I think, Dr. Luskin, let's start kind of with the thing that's the core of your work. You know, we hear many different definitions of forgiveness. People approach it in a lot of different ways. Tell us, how do you define forgiveness? What is it to you? What are you teaching people?
You know, we're mostly a pragmatic training program as best we can be. Try to directly help people go from unforgiveness to forgiveness. So our definition has evolved over the time to be as practical as we can make it. So right now it's making peace with the word no. So, or making peace when the world didn't give you what you want. It's a response to frustration or being stymied or getting an experience that wasn't what you wanted. And it's making peace inside yourself with that experience. So that's how we've, over the years, tried to find what's the core element in all the ways that human beings can create grievances. And it's all about, I didn't get what I wanted.
That's so true. So tell us what's the value in forgiving besides, you know, maybe you'll feel better, but is there value on a physical level? Is it just emotional? You know, talk a little bit about that, please.
I mean, I'm going to say that it's one of the few things that anybody can do to help a little bit towards world peace. That it's so ubiquitous the ability of human beings to take offense. And it's so chronic on this planet. I mean, we get offended by our partners, we get offended by our kids, we watch TV, we get offended by the politics. So we're constantly generating offense. And one that creates a mindset of offense, which then itself becomes offensive. But it also creates, using probably your ideas, an energy of discomfort, of hostility, of interpersonal agitation, which everybody feels in its enormity. I mean, we all, you can feel the energy field. And so when you forgive whatever it is that you created this energy around, you make a little more peace in your little part of the world. And so that to me is the biggest reason to forgive. Is it's a adaptation to threat that is under practice. Go ahead.
I wonder, I'm thinking of a story myself, but could you tell a story, perhaps, since storytelling is one of your things, of an amazing example of somebody forgiving something that maybe that might show listeners, give them the power of what we're talking about?
Well, I can certainly tell you a story, but my response is usually to broaden it.
Okay.
And so I'll do both. So one of them is each of us has to forgive this kind of life with its frustration. We have to forgive the fact that everybody dies. We have to forgive the fact that it's unpredictable and difficult. And so there already is a lot of forgiveness, and it's counterbalanced by how many people don't forgive this stuff, that relationships end, that people die or leave. So we're all engaged in this process of how do we respond to life which is not easy. I've seen some remarkable experiences, but in some ways they're not better than the person who stays married for 35 years and somehow is able to forgive their partner for being a normal pain in the butt. But if you ask me, in my personal experience, I had a woman come into one of our classes probably 20 years ago, maybe not quite that long. And she told me that she was driving up the windy road leading away from Stanford towards the hills. And she and her husband at that time had a very poor marriage, and they were fighting while he was driving the motorcycle, she was holding on to him. He turned around to yell at her.
Oh boy.
And he lost control of the motorcycle.
Oh.
And they smashed into a tree. He became a vegetable. I mean, intellectually vegetable. And she ended up with many years of chronic pain. When she came to the workshop, she was still in really significant chronic pain because of her relentless telling herself what a victim she was and how terrible this was. And to some degree, that's true. But so, what does that do you to tell yourself you're a victim and it's terrible? It just makes you more unhappy. Mm-hmm. So she went through the class. I didn't hear that much from her. Maybe a month or two later, we met at a outdoor cafe kind of thing. And she told me that what the class had catalyzed for her was like the end of her, she wasn't going to be bitter anymore. And that she wanted to really tell me that much of the chronic pain that she had experienced had gone away.
Wow.
That, she had just pain and that it had gone away and that she was in the beginning steps of some degree of reconciling with her husband, not that they were going to stay together, but that he really did have extensive brain damage and that she was going to help in his care.
Wow. That brings me to a question that I really wanted to ask you too, Fred. Is there research that tells us about the physiological effects of not forgiving something?
I mean, they're not unique physiological effects. They're mostly a good part of them is part of the stress response. So if every time you have a moment free, you tell yourself, my ex is a bum, I hate them, then one, you're training your brain to pay attention to negativity. And two, you're arousing your fight or flight nervous system immediately and chronically around the incident. And so since with people who don't forgive, there generally is a chronic state of arousal, the forgiveness disengages that arousal and can lower stress. But also what they're finding now, which is even more remarkable, is its relationship to chronic pain. That it does turn out that the mental and physical pain pathways, they blend at some point. And after a while, the stimulus of whether it's my back hurts or I hate somebody, they join together and amplify each other.
Wow.
And so both chronic pain and manifestations of chronic stress do appear to be influenced by forgiveness.
That's so interesting. And it makes total sense to me because we know all the different ways stress impacts the body. I mean, it's huge. And including, inhibiting the immune system, besides muscle tension and digestive issues and heart issues and all of that, cancer. On my radio show yesterday, I interviewed a man who's doing some interesting work. He has cancer at the present moment, has had it for 3 years, a very unusual form of cancer. But he is teaching people meditation and mindfulness and that kind of work. His doctors can't figure out. He's supposed to be dead now, but he is paddleboarding and riding a bike every day and living a very full life. And it occurs to me that somewhere here, he must have reached some kind of a state of forgiveness of God or life or whoever he feels is responsible for the cancer, because he actually still has the cancer, but he has no terrible pain and he's not inhibited in any way.
Well, from my hearing that, I have two responses to that. One is, I do believe that grievances and stress have a strong influence on the amount of inflammation in the body. And so that is directly related to the experience of pain. Mm-hmm. But I think there's another, and this one, there's no proof to. But cancer appears to have a multiple number of causes. And probably more of the causes are physical than psychological. But my guess is that there are some people with some forms of cancer that it's a psychological, spiritual, emotional insult or injury that without being healed at some point may show up physically as a cancer. I'm not one of those people who says that there is psychosocial injury under every physical illness. I don't know that I believe that, but I know that there are some cases where when you heal the psychological wound, the physical wound resolves.
Wow.
Well, I would, my thought on that is, if we take cancer, I don't know what causes it per se, but we know that from a certain point of view, cancer is the failure of the immune system to do its job. And therefore, anything that suppresses, distresses, takes away energy from the healthy functioning of the immune system probably makes it harder for the body to do its job to heal. And I think you would probably agree that if you're stressed out, spending a lot of energy on being angry, and
Well,
that doesn't facilitate great immune function. Probably facilitates inflammation.
well, Robert, I mean, again, and I'm by no means an oncology person, but it seems that the dysregulation from cancer is both a failure of the immune system and an excitation of other things. So it
Sure.
takes both. There are
Right.
oncogenes and the other genes that turn on and turn off.
Right.
You don't get cancer without both ends being impacted.
Fair enough. Yeah,
Mhm.
right. Fair enough.
That makes total sense.
And
So,
let me just say one other thing.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a physician who really believes that some of the issues with COVID-19 are related to stress and to like the social isolation and all the stuff we're going through, because those create inflammation and make the cytokine storm that actually kills people so much more dangerous.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
interesting.
Let me ask. I wonder if we can shift gears to be, like you said, more pragmatic. So if I come into you and I say, that's all great, Doc, but you don't understand. So and so did such and such, and I've got they just screwed me over, and you know the story. And what I can't let that go. How do I even begin to do that, man?
I have two responses. One is I would probably listen for a little bit before I got bored. Because
You'd forgive them from doing the same old thing that you've heard a million times, but okay.
everybody's got a story of how much they've been screwed over by the world.
Right.
So, but the two primary approaches would be, one, if they have a meditation or a prayer or quieting practice, I would either have them do that or instruct them in one right there, so that they recognize that they have a part of their self and nervous system that's not at that moment agitated, so that it's therefore some choice as to which part of them they bring to the discussion. The second is to give them a kind of Dr. Phil question, which is, how's that working for you? And that is one of the best mental health interventions that I have ever heard. But in the theoretical level, what that means is separating out the content from the process. The content is, my brother-in-law cheated me out of $50,000. The process is how I'm dealing with it. So I would almost immediately make a distinction between the experience that they're describing, the content, which they have no control over, but the process of their reactivity, which they have a lot of control over. So both of those techniques would be to distinguish between the inevitable reactivity which they come in with, and my understanding that they have some choice as to how they respond. That would be the two methods that I would start with.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, the way you say that actually adds a little flavor to me. It's like if you were to say, well, your brother screwed you over, and I imagine one of the things that upset you is you had no control over that. Yeah, damn right, I had no control over that son of a bitch. And then you say, yeah, but do you want to have control over how you respond? Because as long as you stay angry, he's still running the show. He's still screwing you, so to speak.
I mean, but it wouldn't be hard to push back on that, because what I might say, well, if you continue to say that he's running the show, that you're the one making that determination, not him. And so that's your active contribution right now to your distress. Of course you feel upset. You're giving an enormous amount of power to somebody not in the room to ruin your day.
Right, exactly.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Do you find, Dr. Luskin, that there are certain obstacles that come up a lot that prevent people from being able to forgive? I mean, I think we all agree forgiveness is a great idea for body, mind, and spirit, but not everybody can get there. What are the obstacles that you see the most of?
The biggest are simply definitional. So people think that forgiveness means like you have to go home to your parents who beat the crap out of you and go, hey mom, it's Christmas. So that's one that you have to disabuse people of. Two, they think that forgiveness is for the person who harmed you when it's for you. And three, they think like if you forgive, it means you're going to forget about it. It never existed. And that's absurd. So the beginning of it is always definitional, and the back end definition of forgiveness that I would tell most people is that forgiveness is about remembering it differently, not remembering, but remembering in a way where you don't blow out your coronary arteries while you're remembering it.
Right.
So that's one. The second is the real obstacles. At some level, the obstacle to forgiveness is each of our narcissism. That to different degrees, people think themselves the center of the universe. And that actually is the real obstacle we all bring to most loving kindness, positive emotion, hopeful experiences, is because we have deluded ourselves to thinking that the world revolves around us and owes us happiness. So that degree of self-absorption combined with the other aspect of narcissism, which is a lack of empathy, those are the biggest challenges to forgiveness. That, wait, how could anybody do this to me? Like, that's the issue. And then the lack of empathy around just how much suffering there is on this planet, and there's all you got was one flavor. Like, yes, your brother may have cheated you, but you can walk, and your parents may have loved you, and you live in a safe place. It's like the deli counter, just pick a number, it's like, but that lack of empathy makes it very hard for people to get past their dose. So that would be my response to that.
I think that's so huge, and we see that so much. I mean, and that's almost the definition of stuck. You know, if you think it's all about you and somebody did something wrong to you and you have no empathy, where do you go? You know, you are stuck.
You are
And
stuck.
I think it's really interesting. You know, I used to teach grief groups, and forgiveness is a huge issue in grief, as I'm sure you're
Wow.
well aware.
Okay.
And so often people would just feel that they were unable to get there. And one of the things that you said that I really loved is forgiveness is not about the other guy. It's not about making that person that abused you feel better. It's about taking care of yourself. And so I would teach people that, you know, forgiveness is about making the decision and taking the action to not let this have power over your life anymore. And sometimes if they could go there, they couldn't go to forgive and forget kind of a thing. They couldn't go to everything's all better, we're going to be buddies now, but they could go to I'm not
Right.
going to let this hurt me anymore.
One of the things we had to deal with when we started the forgiveness project was, and again, we didn't have answers to any of this. A lot of it was just empirical, like teaching and watching and listening, and I mean, it was a evolving thing. But one of the things we first wrestled with, first, can you forgive dead people? So if you can, it can't be dependent on them.
Right.
Like we used to kid people, are you gonna dig mom up? You know what I mean? And like, you know, yell at her, hold the skeleton and said, you schmuck, you ruined my life. So you can't do that. And they can't apologize when they're dead. So we had to recognize from a kind of pragmatic point of view that it has nothing to do with the other person. It's our processing, conception, way of thinking, self-regulation practices. It's about how we process the world, and it's something that we change. Now, it doesn't mean that reconciliation with someone may be a very valuable goal, but it's distinct from forgiveness.
Right. Yeah. I'm curious, is the idea of letting go of the upset different than forgiveness in your mind? Or is it just another?
I mean, letting go is a very simplistic way of describing a process, just like you can use the word stress to substitute for a whole range of complex emotional experiences.
Mhm.
Forgiveness is a taking of responsibility for our experience, and it's a conscious accepting of suffering without having to make anybody else suffer because we suffered. And then the active decision and practice to let go of the qualities in us that continue to cause suffering for ourselves and others. It's a deep quality.
Right.
Letting go is a nice shorthand, but it's not the same. I mean, it's, you
That's
know,
what I
I'm
was
going to let this shit go. Fine. That's good enough.
And you also focus a lot on meditation. So, and I hear
I
it
do.
in the things that you're talking about. So I think for people, it's a statement / question. I'm gathering if somebody wants to be better at forgiving, learning how to meditate and shift consciousness and be mindful might be a good thing to do as a prerequisite or a kind of a skill that helps you then forgive.
Well, let me give you another overly complex Stanford teacher answer
I'll forgive that.
to what is a very simple question. Um, when you have hurt and you've assigned blame to somebody or something in the past, then you're linked in relationship to that person or experience. That you have a relationship with them here. When we can't self-regulate a damaged relationship, we feel really frightened and vulnerable about their power over us. So there's no problem if mom was a crappy mom. If she's 10 years dead and we have a good family life now and we're well loved, and we just say, Mom stunk, and we're done, there's no issue there. Where the issue arises when we remember mom and we overheat, and our body tightens and our mind spins, and we can't calm it. Then mom is still seen as a threat to us today.
I see.
It's still mom doing it to us rather than our inability to regulate our nervous system.
Nice.
There's nothing better for regulating our nervous system than at least a modest, 10, 15 minutes, 5 minutes of meditation practice. It then teaches us that we can calm ourselves down so that when mom comes back in the relationship to us, we don't have to get lost in that relationship and we don't have to blame mom for anything else. After a few practices like that, mom's no longer such a threat to us.
Right.
So that's where meditation is so critical for this forgiveness thing, because it teaches us that we have some control over our nervous system and our thinking capacity, because meditation both calms the nervous system and focuses the mind. So,
I like that. I like that a lot. So what you're really saying is forgiveness is a way of regulating the self, or regulating the self leads, and that, at least in terms of this show, I mean, we're talking about higher energy, but it's hard to have higher energy if you can't regulate the way we're using it, if you can't regulate yourself. So anything that helps you regulate you is good for you and gives you more control over how you feel and your energy, so to speak. And
it seems to me you would have more available energy if you're not using your energy to hold down your anger or to exacerbate your anger.
Right.
Or even how much negative energy we create.
Right.
By having grievances and grudges running in our mind all the time, and how that even alters our perception of reality.
Yes.
Because they're framed through these grievances and grudges. And so we don't even realize how much that distorts reality.
Wow. I could sit here and talk with you two for hours, but I have a feeling we're probably
we're at time.
We're at time. But Dr. Luskin, this has just been a really amazing discussion. And I think your work is so important. How do people, if they want to learn more about your work or participate in anything, how do they get in touch with you or learn more?
I'm not searching much for business or anything. I do like a chance to talk about forgiveness, which is why I got in touch with you. But all people have to do is Google my name and the books come up. There's probably 100 or more YouTube videos that come up. Anything they want to find out about forgiveness, just put my name in the, on the search engine.
Okay.
And there's so much stuff out there. It's remarkable.
And yet the world still needs a lot more of it.
Amen.
What was that?
And yet the world still needs a lot more of it.
It's endless.
Right.
It's just endless. Anyway, thank you both very much.
Well,
thank you so much, Doctor. It was beautiful and very, very insightful.
Yeah, I I did make some kind of commitment inside of me a long time ago that for whatever reason, I was allowed, probably because I work at a Stanford, to have a public forum that people would listen to me. So I made a commitment, since not that many people were talking about forgiveness, I was going to do that. So anyway, thank you both. I appreciate your good-heartedness.
Oh, thank you. And believe me, you speak about forgiveness very well. I've learned a great deal today. I'm very grateful.
Well, let me tell you, Paula, after 5,000 opportunities, if I didn't, that would be really pathetic.
Yeah,
But
you
would it be
deserve your
would it
job.
be unforgivable?
Maybe.
There it is.
Take care of both of you.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.